Greetings to all my duckies out there. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'm coming at you with another episode review of DuckTales, the 2017 version. This time it's Season 2's episode 23, titled The Richest Duck in the World. And that namely is Louie now, after the events of last episode, where he managed to swindle out the fortunes of both Glomgold and Scrooge McDuck. He now has all the money in the world. But we open this episode by cutting to 1960 in Africa, where Scrooge is closing a deal with the then richest person in the world, Mr. Z, for a mine that contained this rare element that had this mineral that could create cloaks of invisibility, basically. And with that deal sealed, Scrooge was then made the richest duck in the world. Unfortunately for Scrooge, this was all to the delight of Mr. Z, who has no love lost for that title, as it means he is free of the curse of the Bombi. And while at first Scrooge doesn't seem to worry about anything like a curse, he feels like he's dealt with plenty of things over the years, he could handle a little old curse. That is until he actually catches a glimpse of the Bombi. Cut to present-day Duckburg, where Dewey has made the proclamation that he will not be giving Scrooge back that fortune. And much to the surprise of Louie, Owlson, and Manny, Scrooge is all for it. He feels that it'll end up becoming too much of a pain and too much work for Louie that he'll be begging Scrooge to take back his fortune. But Louie feels that this is all he needs. The status, the money, the power, it's everything he could ever want. However, now the curse of the Bombi has been transferred over to him, and it has circulated out into the world as a homing beacon. Meanwhile, Della is trying to send out a message into space in order to contact her best friend, Penumbra. And she even tries to introduce the kids, But you come to find out, Della comes to find out that the kids were never actually getting her messages all those years ago, which you think would have been the first thing that was actually pointed out to her, but kind of bittersweet. Those things that were only keeping her sane over all those hard, long years of solitude and isolation, which a very sad, painful moment. Della has a lot of those in this episode. Unfortunately, they end up breaking Della's camera, but Dewey sees an opportunity to broadcast Dewey Tonight across the known universe, and to get the message out to Penumbra and the Moon People, since they were originally supposed to follow her back to Earth so she could show them around and show them a good time. Meanwhile, Louie has wasted no time in taking over the money bin, and while Owlson is trying her best to keep Louie on track, he decides to spend a stupid amount of money to reunite the boys of the Ottoman Empire after their breakup a few episodes ago. And, they start constructing an ottoman for Louie. However, with this gross spending, naturally the board of directors would like to speak with Louie, questioning why he would spend such an obscene amount and how it could possibly benefit McDuck Enterprises. But Louie just says, that's what I have you guys for, figure it out. So they think that, we do have a lot of money being funneled into that place, Falcon Island, spent on magical defenses. We could always cut that. But as soon as Louie agrees to it, Owlson says that there's trouble on Falcon Island, and Louie has no choice but to address it quick, fast, and in a hurry. Meanwhile, Scrooge is all too ready to sit on his behind as the now penniless Scrooge McDuck. But as soon as he turns on the TV for some relaxing times, he turns into the Ottoman Empire with the boys talking about how they're so glad that they are working. They're so happy. It's so fulfilling. They'd rather be dead if they weren't working. So Scrooge decides to take that message to heart and decides to rebuild his fortune from the ground up, one dime at a time. Meanwhile, Owlson is desperately trying to get Louis to take this situation seriously, as they have no real information on Falcon Island. Scrooge did his best in order to hide and bury every little bit of information and strike Falcon Island from any form of map. But Louis is desperate to prove that, as the richest duck in the world, he can handle anything, as the Bombi is on the move and can feel the richest duck in the world approaching. So, as our intrepid team of McDuck Incorporated make their way into the heart of Falcon Island, they find what seems to be another money bin. Meanwhile, after talking with Dewey on his show, Della kind of comes to the realization that maybe she and Penumbra were never truly friends. Dewey comes from the perspective, and because of the fact that Della was so desperate for other form of contact, friendship, something, she kind of ignored the fact that Penumbra just wasn't really happy to have Della around in any way, shape, or form, and was probably happy to get rid of her after Della left. And that really seems to rattle Della to the core and open her eyes to maybe she was more of a menace than an actual help. Meanwhile, Louis takes a peek inside the money bin and finds it to be more of a holding cell more than anything else. And they find out what was being held when they are approached by the Bombi. Now, a little bit of DuckTales lore on the Bombi. Now, the Bombi was actually known as this creature called Bombi the Zombie, introduced way back in the old Don Rosa DuckTales comics. Well, Scrooge and, Donald comics for the most part. And despite his name, Bombi wasn't really like a real zombie. He was actually just an unfortunate guy who was bewitched by an African voodoo doctor, which really explains why they didn't take that angle here. The voodoo doctor Fula Zula, and was made to be this mindless slave who was sicked on Scrooge because of an injustice that Scrooge had done to the African people. Again, a very unfortunate storyline when you think of all the strife and hardships that goes on in Africa, especially the very native and less fortunate people in terms of like diamond mining and all that stuff. So, yeah. And Bombi honestly was very conscious throughout this whole entire experience, but he's unable to kind of comprehend or reflect on his thoughts or actions because of the spell placed on him by Fula Zula. And when Fula Zula sent Bombi after the young Scrooge McDuck, Fula's Bombi, all of his bodily processes were slowed down. His aging, his ability to feel pain, anything like that, so he could just continue on for almost all of eternity with nothing really changing in him except this need to take down Scrooge. And so he chased Scrooge for years upon years upon years. And eventually, because Scrooge aged and he got older and Bombi just stayed the same, eventually he stumbled upon Donald and tried to chase after Donald because Donald looked so much like a young Scrooge McDuck. But eventually they were able to kind of snap Bombi out of the whole trance because he kind of fulfilled a little bit of the vengeance that Fula Zula had sent him on. But because of the mercy that Huey, Dewey, and Louie felt towards Bombi, because Bombi was very much more a victim than anything else. The whole team of Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Donald, who was a little less than apathetic to Bombi's plight, they all ended up, heading back to Africa and tangling with Fulazula, and they managed to take Fulazula down, but Bombi was still kind of left to live out its existence as a wandering zombie-like creature. So, Bombi has a very tragic origin, but that's not really put on display in terms of this series. No, Bombi is pissed and out to take down the richest duck in all the world. And Owlson is really having none of Louis' shenanigans, as he's put them in this very dangerous situation. And Louis is very much not taking this seriously, feeling that his wealth should be able to solve such a situation. But Bombi cannot be bought or sold. It is only through, what was the legend? Giving up that which you could never, I forget how it goes. It's only through giving up something specific, something that you could never truly, give up, that you be able to know peace. Something that you could never truly, buy, that you would ever know peace. There we go. So they end up being chased across the entirety of the island, while Scrooge starts out from the beginning as a shoeshine boy. Unfortunately, here in Duckburg, not too many people actually wear shoes. Nice bit of meta commentary, but as Della kind of goes over everything that happened with her on the moon, she becomes more and more convinced about, just how bad she had it. She talked about how, she kind of went mad in all these various different situations. Honestly, it gets pretty sad when it comes to Della and her life on the moon. And speaking of sad, Louis kind of comes up with a new plan in order to get away from the Bombi, as they manage to trick him with the golden Louis head, Louis' jacket, and a rock. And Louis has his company take out all the defense satellites around the planet, mainly the ones that are closest to Falcon Island, and actually has them dropped out of orbit right onto the Bombi. But the Bombi manages to survive. Even when a whole heap of them come down, he manages to latch onto the Sun Chaser. And while Louis is partying it up and having a good time and feeling like he had a major victory, Owlson tries to bring him down to reality, that he still has work ahead of him. There is solid practical work that he has to be doing. But Louis feels that, no, it's whatever, I don't need to listen to you, I'm the richest duck in the world, blah blah blah, only for the Bombi to come in to punish him for his arrogance. But Owlson has finally had enough. As the most sensible person in this entire series, she's tired of playing second fiddle to men who act like children and actual children, billionaires. She's gone through school, she's owned several successful businesses, and she has had enough. And as she ties herself in order to keep herself grounded, she puts in her 2 weeks resignation, saying that she will train her replacement, and that is it. She will become her own billionaire in order to change the world for the better, as she has Launchpad pull up so that the Bombi can be tossed out of the loading bay door. Unfortunately, the Ottoman that Louis had commissioned ends up pulling him out of the plane as well. But he manages to float back to, Duckburg on it. Unfortunately, the Bombi also manages to follow Louis back to Duckburg, and Scrooge's business is not going so well, as he's swindled out of his money by the Yeti, Bigfoot, whatever from last season. He then notices Louis being chased by the Bombi and does his best to hide and avoid it with Louis. And when Scrooge explains the situation to Louis about the riddle and all that good stuff, that the Barnaby cannot be bought or bargained with or sold off or whatever, that it's only through giving up something you can't buy, offering up something you can't buy, that you'll be able to survive its wrath. And Louis, he can't figure out what that is. He can basically buy and own everything. He's at a loss to what could possibly be enough to stop the Bombi if it's not something you can buy. But, Scrooge ends up in a bit of a sticky situation, and Louis can only flee. That is until he admits that he doesn't even deserve the money that he has. And it's only then that the Bombi finally stops. And, Louis kind of owns up to the fact that that's what it is. Owning up to the fact that you have to show humility. That's what you have to offer up. Humility. That's what you have to give up, your own humility. And it's through this that Louis finds his own humility after all of this. That he didn't earn any of the money he gained. He got it through deceptive means. He didn't earn any of it. And he's been acting like he's so far above everything, but he's not. He still has a long way to go. And when Scrooge questions, because Scrooge is still a little bit on the arrogant side himself, that's why he can never figure anything out. That's why he only ever locked up the Bombi. With the Bombi finally kind of put to a stop for the time being, they kind of question what happens now. And Louis offers up the ultimate form of humility by offering to shine the Bombi's shoes that have been so worn from muck of all the years of wandering and walking. And Scrooge even helps out as well, saying that Louis has actually done pretty well. But Louis admits that he never really deserved this money. It was too much for him. He didn't earn it. He didn't deserve it. It was a little too much for someone so young. But Scrooge admits that, you didn't earn it because you don't have the knowledge and experience that comes with it. But you also managed to show that you had it in you to actually be a better billionaire than I, by actually offering up your own humility, by taking this moment to actually admit that maybe you weren't the best. You've shown me just what it means to actually have humility. And with that, the curse is lifted for both of them. And as the Bombi gives a nice little smile at the generosity and humility that both ducks have shown, he wanders off into the distance for parts unknown. And while Louis apologizes for all the damage he's done over all this time, Scrooge admits that, hey, if this is what you did as your time as a billionaire, well, I think you did pretty well within those 24 hours. And as Della packs up her equipment, feeling bad that maybe she and Penumbra weren't the closest of friends, a call comes over on the radio. It's Penumbra calling out to her best friend Della and reporting that, it seems that the defense satellites around the Earth have all gone down for some reason. And with that, it has made it all the more easier for Lunaris and his army to approach in on Duckburg and to launch their assault on Della and the entirety of Clan McDuck. Man, what a fun episode. Dude, I love the references that they put in, because I knew a little bit about Bombi the Zombie in passing, and that was it. Like a passing mention of this creature because of its ties to blood money and all that good stuff and African culture and all that, but it's just so surreal how they continue to pull and rework certain elements from the old Don Rosa and comic books and all that good stuff. how they took such an honestly controversial character and reworked him into something better. Not Don Rosa, Carl Barks. Carl Barks was the one who invented Bombi the Zombie. But to see it used in this capacity and to teach Louis a lesson that he really needed to learn. Like, Louis has been on this arc throughout the entirety of the season. Honestly, more than anything else, I feel that Season 1 was Dewey's story arc, where he had to grow and develop in his wants and search that personal need to find his mom after all these years. That was his story arc. That was everything he was going through. Here, it seems like the major selling point for this season was the story arc of Louis and how his greed and his hubris was constantly putting his family in danger, and he wasn't thinking about his actions. Even here, he didn't think his actions through. He was just all about the money. He was all about the status, and that actually ended up causing him more trouble than anything else. Now, I'm not sure if Louis will fully embrace this lesson he's been dealt, but by showing him having had humility hammered into him, I'm fascinated to see where we'll go from here on out, as this is the last episode before the two-part season finale. Now, technically it's posted as a one episode, but it's like an hour special. Well, not really an hour. If you count in like commercial breaks and all that, it's like 40 something minutes, but even still, it was fun to see everything that kind of led up to this finale, but I was kind of taken off guard because I thought we would be leading into the invasion of the moon. I wasn't expecting us to kind of take a bit of a side detour into this, arc for Louis. Louis just being humbled and learning that his way isn't always the best. Sometimes he needs to admit that he's not always in the right and always knows what to do. And it was a great lead up with all of this. Like, you could literally package those few episodes, like the situation he was in with Goldie, the situation he was in with the time tub, when he was grounded, and this episode, all packaged together, make a phenomenal story arc for Louis in and of itself. Very much, again, like Dewey's story arc of constantly looking for clues and trying to find things out about Della. And I'm hoping that next season will focus more on Huey, as Huey is probably the most underutilized of the triplets. Like, Huey just really does not have a lot going for him in terms of this series. It's not like he's bad, or it's not like, I hate him or anything. It's just that Huey does not shine as much as the other brothers. And I really would like them to try to flesh him out, to explore him, to have him learn something, to grow as a character during the course of the next season in a similar way that Dewey and Louie had. But tell me your feelings, thoughts, and theories in the comment section below. How did you feel about Bombi the Zombie? How did you feel about Della and her realization that maybe she wasn't as buddy-buddy with Penumbra as she thought she was? But ultimately, it was Della's bleeding heart, her caring, and her compassion that did end up making, Penumbra feel something and wanting to help her in the end. So maybe it wasn't so wrong at all. Maybe it was just Penumbra who needed that change within her because she was, a very selfish person at the start. Very nice stuff, but a very fascinating lead up, a good episode, at least in my eyes. Again, tell me your thoughts, feelings, and theories in the comment section below. If you liked this video, leave me a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike and tell me what I did wrong in the comment section below. The way I can get better with future videos. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. That way you don't miss out on the Season 2 finale of DuckTales. And if you want to find me on social media, just Google Duuz-Diz-Din. I'm everywhere for better or for worse. Keep an open mind, and hopefully you're over 18. And until the next video, I just want you to remember that greed isn't everything. Sometimes you just have to humble yourself before others. Show that you care. Show that you're not above everything. And sometimes things fall more into place than if you were the richest person in the world. Because without humility, you just end up being more of a monster than the real monsters out there. Until next time, I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and it's high time I went to bed. Bye bye.